Do you like diseases? No. No. Nobody likes disease. Diseases are shit. That was not a good intro. Are you the kind of dungeon master that really likes to use diseases in their campaign and in their story as the main bad guy? Well, you should really look into the Malady Chronicles. Now, all joking and kidding aside, diseases are absolute shit. They're fucked up. We all know somebody who, or have known somebody who was or is really sick. We did our best to make their lives better and, well, it's fucked up. It shouldn't happen. And I just want to say that this module, the Malady Chronicles, in no way, shape or form wants to muck with those people that had a certain bad disease or are still suffering from a certain bad disease. I think it is a very original way of looking at an adventure module. So if you go as an adventurer on an adventure and you have to deal with these deadly plagues and deadly illnesses where some of them are really based on real life things that really happened, I think it's a very original way of coping with that, and like in real life, it actually pulls the best out of people, because when somebody is sick, when somebody has a disease, people gather around, they try to help out, they try to make their lives better. There's a lot of good in people, and you can really notice the setup of this module when reading it. It's that they were exactly going for. So what exactly are the Malady Chronicles, or is the Malady Chronicles as a physical copy or PDF? Well, it's a Dungeon Masters Guild product that I have been sent by the creators of the product, asking me if I could review it. And it is actually 9 cataclysmic adventures featuring the deadliest plagues and diseases the realms have ever seen. That's a mouthful, but yes, it's 9 adventures, spamming all the way from level 1 to 15, it says right here, with all kinds of diseases and plagues and maladies in them for your players to overcome. And I've been on the fence about reviewing this or featuring it on my channel, yes or no, because either it is for you or either it isn't for you at all. Because first of all, there's 2 things I want to say about that. First of all, it covers diseases. For some people, that's just not a thing they want to cover in their books, and I get that. It's like crazy clowns I did last week. Some people are really scared of clowns and they don't want to feature them in their game, so that's okay. It's a fantasy game, do whatever that makes you feel good. The second thing is I have one big problem. Well, I personally have one big problem with this thing, and that is the I want to say the artwork, but it is not so much the artwork, because the artwork that is in here is great, it's good, it's fantastic even. It's the general outlook of the book. First of all, the cover. There's this small picture and then there's this big ass title, and there's this subtitle that covers half of the cover almost. It is a Dungeon Masters Guild book, so it's a good hard copy. I mean, it's good enough, but it's in the inside that really bothers me. They used all kinds of, I want to say, all kinds of different kinds of artwork, and although all the artwork in here they're all very good. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them are very, very good, but there's just no consistency in them, if you know what I mean. And I know I might be a little bit nitpicky when it comes to artwork, but I don't know, I think there has to be consistency in the artwork in a module. Also, this book, and I swear I've never said this ever about a module, this is the first time I'm saying this, there's way too much artwork in here. They are putting 1 or 2 or 3 sometimes pieces of artwork on every single page. This book has more artwork than it has text almost, and they're using a lot of, I don't know if it's stock artwork, but there's a lot of things in here that I've already seen in other modules. I'm sure of that. I cannot really pinpoint where or when I've seen them, but I don't know, there's just a lot of artwork in here that I've already seen. But then there is one more problem, and that's something that really breaks immersion for me. I've seen this a couple of times in Dungeon Masters Guild products, and it really breaks the entire immersion. I know it might be, you might be laughing at this and you might be like, Mr. T, that's some proper bullshit, but for me it breaks immersion, and that is using, I'm going to look for one, that is using real photos. Photos, not painted, not drawn, like photos. I mean, there's a photo in here of a city. There's a photo in here of, let me see, there's even a photo of like a castle. There's also somewhere there's a photo in here of like this one. This is just, I don't know, roses that probably make you sick or something. And then there is this, which is just a photo that could be the background of your wall or of your computer or something. But for me, that's just something you don't do when you create a book that is for the Dungeon Masters Guild or whatever, hard copy. That said, that all out of the way, I still think this one is good enough to feature on my channel, because I had a lot of these Dungeon Masters Guild hard copies, soft copies, all kinds of stuff to my mailbox, and this one just popped out for some reason, because it is actually a very good module when you don't really consider most of the artwork. So like always, when I review one of these modules that has a certain amount of adventures in it, I just want to skip through it and look into some of the adventures that popped out for me, just to give you a basic and clear understanding of what to expect when you acquire the Malady Chronicles. The first one that caught my eye was The King's Evil, a urban environment adventure in Baldur's Gate. Well, it is in Baldur's Gate when you read it in this module, but of course if you play in your homebrew campaign, you can put it in any densely populated city you like, so it's very adaptable. Just put it somewhere and play it. There is this sickness, this illness that people are calling the King's Evil, and it is a sickness that is akin to leprosy and scrofola, and there's a lot of people catching the disease in the city of, let's just say, Baldur's Gate. And the government, of course, are taking those people away and putting them away for safety and for healing and whatever, because they don't want the illness to spread. Of course, that's very logical. But there's one dwarf that suspects that there is more going on, and he hires the party or the characters to actually go in there, go into the zone where the sick are, and to rescue his brother, who is of course sick, because he wants to know what exactly is going on. And well, it seems that he is about right, because once the players go in there, well, they have to feign the disease, they have to act like as if they have the disease, and a lot of players will be really smart about this, and they will act as if they have the disease, and then they will carry this priest. Probably somebody will be a priest, like a cleric or something, with minor restoration or something like that. But the thing is, once they go inside these walls, healing magic does not work at all. So once they're in and the gate is locked behind them, the players, well, they realize they're in for trouble, and there actually is more going on. As a matter of fact, they cannot find a single sick person around, and they have to discover what exactly is going on. And there is this clan which call themselves the Vultures of Fortune, that took all of these sick people underground, and they now use them as slaves to mine a secret ore, a ore that if you create weapons with that ore, it actually damage you deal with those weapons cannot be healed by magical means. So in other words, it's a very, very expensive ore, and this clan, the Vultures of Fortune, are actually using the sick and making sure they do not get healed by having this anti-healing shield zone thing going on, and they're using them as slaves to get this ore, and they're guarding them with oozes and all kinds of crazy things, and it is up to the players to go in there and to try to save this dwarf and maybe some more people while they're at it. And I think it's a very original way of looking at a adventure, because the players will think they go into a typical dungeon crawl and they have to feign this disease to get in there, and then they have to just retrieve somebody and get them out. And while of course they're doing that, the biggest enemy of the adventure becomes the king's evil itself, the disease, because in these holes where the slaves are, there's a lot of sick people in there, and there is no real means of curing themselves. So once one or two party members actually catch the disease, it becomes more of a race against the clock than it becomes a typical dungeon crawl. So I think it's that kind of thing that really caught my eye when I was reading through this this module. They're kind of thinking about a reversed type of, it's kind of a reversed type of thinking when creating a dungeon crawl, where the disease, so more like the story, becomes the villain. Oh, and they have to defeat like these kinds of things. So yes, the adventure is very well written out, like you'd expect from a good adventure. There are boxes with text to read out loud to your players to set the stage, and there's also a lot of boxes in here with role-playing tips on how to role-play certain situations, but also how to role-play certain characters in the story. And although the bigger brands of Dungeons & Dragons content have a lot of that, the smaller modules on the Dungeon Masters Guild, they don't have enough of that, to my opinion. So that's a big thumbs up for this adventure, for this module. Actually, there's a lot of these purple boxes, and I really like purple boxes. Another thing that I really like, and there's some big brands that don't even do enough of this, and that's using bold letters in the middle of text. A lot of the times when I read an adventure or when I read a module and I have a certain dexterity check that my players need to make, or there's a certain NPC I want to remember the name of, I have to write everything down in advance while I'm reading the thing. You don't really have to do that, because every time there's something really important in the text, they use bold letters, which is such a simple thing to do when you create a module or whatever. But a lot of people don't do that, and I've been thinking about that a lot. I mean, there's like perception check right here, DC 20 wisdom perception check, DC 20 stealth check, there's names of NPCs, everything you need to know like on the fly is in bold letters in this wall of text. So that's a great thing, and again, a big thumbs up. Before I talk about another of these adventures, there's one more thing that I think is really great that they did with this module is they have every adventure in here, they have it written out entirely, and then they have the appendix of whatever you need to run the adventure. For example, maps, handouts, creatures, and information about the disease. Here again, maps, handouts, disease, other information, maps, creatures, disease, and it has the page number directly next to it. So in other words, you have the adventure without it being interrupted with all kinds of stat blocks you don't really need directly, and then they have the appendix, and the pages are right here. So for quick reference, that's very cool. And I like modules that have a lot of these small quick reference things in there, like bold letters and like these kinds of things. For years, decades, centuries, the dwarves under Dolva Mountain have been digging some more to retrieve gems, to retrieve stone, and to retrieve everything that shines, because they are dwarves. But a few days ago, they stumbled upon a entrance, what seems to be the entrance of a very ancient vault, and nobody really knows what's inside that vault, what's behind those big doors. And of course, dwarves be dwarves, they all start fantasizing of what could be behind it, and there's a lot of families of dwarves that think they have the claim to go inside that vault, and they actually think they have the claim to that vault. And of course, there are a lot of bad people among those people, and it is the characters, the player characters, that arrive here at that point because they have been traveling with a convoy to get supplies and food to the miners that have been working deep underground and have been working to uncover the door to the vaults. And they go there, they are actually meted with a lot of friendly dwarves, and they have a big festival food, they get a great dinner. But suddenly people start getting really really sick. When they start coughing and they start feeling really bad and green smoke comes out of their lungs. And the players, once the players realize that something bad is going down and they maybe even want to leave, a purple worm and 2 umber hulks show up. And of course the players fight these off because this is a level 9 to 12 adventure. The players fight these off, but the single purpose of the purple worm and the single purpose of the 2 umber hulks was to actually destroy the entrance and to have everybody who was inside this mine to be stuck inside this mine. So there's a lot of rocks and people have to start digging out themselves, but the problem is a lot of people that are inside are sick and a lot of other people are getting sick, and there's even people dying from the illness. And so there's a lot of tension in there and a lot of things going on. People are even becoming crazy and there's fights and everything. And then suddenly a person shows up through means of teleportation. He shows up with the antidote he promises the people he has the stuff that makes them feel better, but the only thing he wants in return, of course, is to have the claim to this vault. So again, it's kind of a typical idea you see in movies and you see in books, you read in books, where this bad guy spreads a disease and then comes up with the solution for the disease to get the people on his or her side, and then get something in return. In this case, it's entrance to a vault that nobody really knows what's inside the vault, but he wants access to that vault anyway. So that's a basic idea, but it's kind of cool to play one of these ideas because there is this bad guy who wants access to the vault, and it's clearly a bad guy, and your players have to uncover the mystery of what's going on. But there's also, again, a big disease and people are really getting sick, and there is this timeline in here where events happen the further you are in the story. There's this big colony, and then they add some politics into it because there's a lot of dwarven families and they all think they have the right to the vault, and people start pushing each other inside of pits and they start fighting because, well, it's dwarves and dwarves fight a lot. So there's politics in here, there's a bad guy in here, and there's the disease in here. So it's a very cool adventure to play when you're level 9, 10, 11 or 12. Another reason why I think a module about diseases is very cool is, and I didn't really think about this before I start reading it, but they actually talk about this in the module, is it can cover, it can spread over different campaigns and it can spread over different stories. For example, your players can catch a disease in one story at level 5, but it's a very slow disease. So at level 9 or level 10, suddenly they start getting sick from something they did when they were only level 5. So for some parties that's like 2 or 3 years ago, and you are like, you remember when your character did this and this and that. Well, actually you now need to roll some constitution saving throws because your character is slowly starting feeling sick, and I think that's a cool way of tying an entire campaign, of tying an entire story arc together, because your players will not only think about the present, but they also start thinking about what they did in the past, and they're like, oh yeah, screw that, we did that, and oh, my character got really sick from that. And I think that's a cool thing you can use in your campaign. As a matter of fact, I'm playing a few of these adventures as standalone adventures in my campaign. The King's Evil, for example, I will be putting it in my campaign just as an in-betweener. I mean, when the players are... There is a big story arc I'm playing, but I just want, as an in-betweener, I want them to like the side quest thing, but you know, maybe they catch the disease, maybe they catch the King's Evil, and maybe a few years after that their characters start getting really sick, which I think is a really cool way of telling a story. Also, all of these stories in here are created by different people, and you can actually notice that when you're reading it. Every story, every campaign, every adventure is written in a slightly different way, and that is not at all a bad thing. That's actually a good thing, because you can skip through this thing, you can flip through it, and you can actually find what you think, what suits you, what you like to read. But in the same time, they use bold letters everywhere, they use a lot of purple boxes everywhere, they use a lot of stat blocks everywhere, and they use a lot of role-playing tips everywhere. So in that sense, it's really, really great. So this was my review or preview or whatever you would like to call it of the Malady Chronicles from the Dungeon Masters Guild. The first time I reviewed a product that I have some issues with on the one hand and I like very much on the other hand. So if you have real issues with the things that I have issues with, then don't pick it up. Skip it, it's not for you. If you are really impressed with the things that I am really impressed with, well, make sure to buy it, especially the PDF for $14.99, so $15. The PDF is well worth it. You get 9 adventures that are well written out, and you can put them almost anywhere in your campaign. So make sure to check that one out, and I hope your inspiration may guide you.